And one of the reasons for that is that the propaganda that had been put out by Putin and by the media from Russia, that it was just a military exercise, that it was Western propaganda, that there was going to be an invasion, had done its trick. And I spoke to many people that said, oh, I'm not coming to it because it won't really happen. The day before, it became apparent that something was going to happen, and that day was when the 3 journalists from the Associated Press made their way into Mariupol, knowing that something was going to happen very important there, at the very time when virtually all the international journalists were leaving the city. Those 3 journalists went into the city and continued to film for 20 days. That's why it's called 20 Days in Mariupol. But 20 days isn't particularly significant. The siege went on for a total of 86 days before total surrender of Mariupol. There was intense fighting, thousands were killed, possibly 25,000 people killed in those few months. And 90% of the buildings, residential buildings included, were destroyed. There was such many war crimes that happened. So these 20 days are significant because that was the 20 days that the 3 Associated Press journalists stayed and filmed. And I know that they were very worried and guilty when they did manage to leave on the 20th day. But I'm so glad they did, because this film is very special. It hasn't had a British Film Institute certificate to show people publicly at cinemas, which is why I think we're the first city to manage to get one. And I thank the City Council for viewing the film and seeing that it was, as they saw it, so important that the public see this. They did ask me a question. They all said it was one of the most moving films they'd ever seen, but they did ask me a number of questions which pertained around that they might be worried that showing a contested view of war may lead to some communities being upset by it. But I did say that we were worried about that right at the beginning of the campaign, but 21 months on, and even just a few days after the invasion, we had 1,000 people come to the Brian Clough statue instead of the handful that we had just a few days before. We've had dozens of demonstrations and events, and particularly from the Ukrainian community themselves, who've made them such a privilege to attend. And I really do urge, if any of you haven't attended any, to get in touch with us. I've got leaflets here for keeping in touch with us via Facebook or WhatsApp or X or whatever it might be, whatever social platform it is. So I've got leaflets to keep in touch with. But I would urge anybody to go to anything, because the amount of effort that particularly the Ukrainian community make with placards, with dramatisations, music, poetry, singing, whatever they do it in a fantastic way that makes it an absolute privilege to be there. So the actual film itself, as I said, they continued filming for 20 days until there were the only international journalists left in the city. And I think that's quite important to note, because it wasn't like there was no other journalists there, and there may still be other journalists there, because it was a city the size of Nottingham, over 500,000 people. Now there's less than 100,000. So 400,000 people have left the city. Many of them have seen the film in Ukraine, and they've said that they want it to be seen. They definitely want this film to be seen. So when you hear it's been a difficult decision for the director and the makers of the film of what to include, because, as they say in the film, this is a painful watch, but it has to be painful. But they were also aware that they got 30 hours of footage, and they could have easily shown many more horrific images, but they knew they didn't want to turn away an international audience. So I think they've got the balance right, and I don't think it's just me. It's already won the prestigious Sundance Festival Award for documentary, and just locally, just recently, the Sheffield Film Festival won. And it's Ukraine's entry for the Academy Awards, which will be announced this month. and it's widely tipped to win the Oscar. But I don't think that's the key thing. The key thing that this is about is, as I said to the committee when they were looking at the film, it's about that you only saw 1 or 2 minutes on the news about Mariupol, and that was highly contested. So all the images, the famous images you'll see here, including one of the images was World Photograph of the Year by the World Press Awards. Even that image was contested. The Russian embassy tweeted just after they saw the photograph of the woman from the maternity hospital that won the World Press Photograph of the Year award. They said it was an actor, and I'll let you decide, and that's why 90 minutes isn't enough. There's hundreds of thousands of other stories, and in fact one of the things that happened was probably the most famous thing that happened there. Was the day after that the 3 journalists left the city. It was on the 21st day of the war, of the invasion, and that was the bombing of the Mariupol theatre, a very famous theatre there, where there was over 1,000 people sheltering as a bomb shelter. It had a huge marking on it saying children, which could be seen from satellite, so it was very clearly marked, and yet it was bombed, and nobody knows how many people were killed. The estimates are about 600, but certainly one of the big war crimes of the many war crimes that have happened during this. So they felt guilty that they'd left on that day, but I don't think they should feel guilty. I think they're incredibly brave to stay and film, and in fact, one of the few journalists that was left with them, a Lithuanian documentary maker, he was going to the same checkpoints that they were going to, that they had to escape, and you'll see in the film, and he was stopped and executed. So I think the fact that managed to get any footage out at all, both to the world at the very time when it was happening, and to get it out and made into a film now, is an absolutely amazing thing, and I think we are very privileged to see it. So I will hand over to Zoriana, and she'll just say a few words in Ukrainian. And like I said, we'll be myself, and there's other people from Nottingham Ukraine Solidarity will be around, probably in the bar. Got leaflets if you want to talk.